Hey Magdalena, it's nice to have you here.
Hi, Anthony. It's nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Been a while. I think the last time we saw each other was actually in Slovenia, I think.
Really, it meant I was trying to pinpoint when it was actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's possible.
Yeah, it was at Manta. I remember you clearly telling me that you had this idea of us all sitting in a room and doing this think tank thing and like coming up with a bunch of ideas of how we can change the music industry.
That's right. We were talking about how weren't we doing something around festivals?
Yeah,
How to redo the Showcase Festival.
exactly.
Yes.
That was it. Yeah, yeah, I remember very well. So just to start, like give us a bit of your background. Like tell whoever's watching like more about your and or listening, more about yourself, who you are, where you're from. You know your history as Magdalena.
Oh, can you hear the birds chirping in the background?
No, not yet.
No, maybe not because they're so loud. It's unbelievable. We have some birds' nests in the corner of our house, just out the window. But about myself, so I'm currently sitting in London. I've been spending lockdown in London. I previous to that was splitting my time between Warsaw and London. I have lived in Poland for about the last 14 years of my life.
Yeah,
Um, I'm half Polish.
yeah. That was my next question. You're half Polish, half Polish,
Yeah,
half
yeah.
Polish.
So exactly. So I was born in the US, spent first 18 years of my life in the US, moved to Poland when I was 18 for a year to check it out and loved it. But then moved back. I did my degree in the United States and then moved back permanently to Poland in my early 20s after finishing college. And yeah, started my professional life there. I started working actually first as a radio journalist. I was not meant to be in music at all. I was meant to work in international relations areas. That was what I had studied in political science.
Yeah,
And I actually wanted to be an international conflict mediator. I am a certified conflict mediator. I did a lot of training in nonviolent communication. And I had planned when I was in my early 20s to solve the Middle East peace crisis. That was my plan.
well, we're still stuck here, so
I know. Not
that's
much has changed in your life in terms of the political situation.
yeah, exactly. So that's why I wanted to see like how you got into music, like why and how did that happen? Like what was the turning point? That was it something you felt you wanted to do, or was it like an accident?
Not really. No, I was not. I'm not one of those typical getting into the music industry people that's like a massive music nerd that's super passionate about music. And so I've always wanted to be in the industry. I'm not one of those people at all.
Okay.
I got into the industry by accident. I actually really had always been very passionate about going into politics. And when I was 13, I declared that I want to be the first woman president. When I was at university, I was the chair of an anti-genocide organization against genocide in Darfur. I mean, I was always very politically active. Um, and so then, but like I mentioned earlier, my first job, career job really in Poland was at Polish Public Radio. I was working in the World Service in the English department, and it was great. I loved it. I got to do a little bit of traveling to do interesting news stories as part of kind of this European news network. I mean, it was wonderful. And at some point, I got the opportunity to have a music show because I've always loved music and I've always listened to a lot. And music has always been a very, very important part of my life, but I wasn't a big music nerd, right? Um, but I got my own music show, and it was in English for the Foreign Service, basically. And so I was presenting young Polish culture or young Polish music. I didn't just focus on music. I did a few festivals here and there, and slowly, I started to focus on music and bands, and that was how I got to meet a lot of bands, got to know a lot of people in the music industry in Poland at the time, which was a sort of fascinating, very underdeveloped, huge amounts of opportunity place. Um, and then how did it go exactly? I was sort of stuck on like kind of bored in the end of January so winter, crappy winter in Poland. And 1 year, and over 10 years ago at this point, this is like 11 or 12 years ago. And yeah, my friend's band was on tour. It was not a huge band. They were not that professional. They were just sort of starting to tour with a few musicians and rather DIY vibes. But they were on tour, and so I said to her like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend? I'm losing my mind. Can I come?" So she invited me to join them on tour. They didn't have a tour manager, like I said, quite DIY. I ended up helping them with a few things. They ended up asking me if I wanted to tour manage. I thought this was a great opportunity. So I did. And it just kicked off from there, really.
Yeah, because I can see that. I mean, you're clearly into the whole. I mean, a lot more into artist managing than anything else. Even though you do quite a lot of things in music, so that's why one of the things I wanted to see. So, what was the like when you got into management of artists? So you're saying that it was at this point where you went on tour and so on, but right after that, was it something that was making money for you? Was it something that you were
No. It was totally a passion project.
Yeah.
And it was also fun and really life-changing. And I very quickly got asked to be their tour manager formally. I very quickly started to get bored with that role and needed something more. Very quickly realized that maybe we could do something outside of Poland with this band, because they're also singing in English, and English is like a bit tricky for the Polish market exclusively. The lead singer is also mixed heritage like me. She's Polish Canadian. So she and I were very quickly inclined to do something outside of Poland as well. So what we decided, and that wasn't happening in Poland. There was nobody doing that. So we were very, very much breaking new ground here. And there was no path for us to walk on or for us to follow. There was no prescription of what to do. And there was an industry in Poland. The major labels existed. There was a very big, like, kind of commercial industry, and then a very cool, super, super indie community, and nothing in between.
Okay.
So we were very much part of this super cool indie community, right? No one to teach me. No, I had no idea what I was doing, but but we were very much not a part of this commercial world. It took me a long time to be able to understand how that works and to get into that part of the industry, quite frankly. But so with our international ambitions, we decided to all pack seven people into a van, toss €100 into a pot to pay for the rental and to pay for our initial gas startup, and get on the road in the month of August and test out how the band would be received in, I think we tried 7 countries. So that was in March. And we're leaving in August. And between March and August, it was my job, not knowing anything anywhere or what I was doing other than like logically how to plan things in life, right? Like
statistics, organization.
Exactly. Right. So I booked us a tour. I actually managed to book us 21 concerts in 31 days, or 23, something like that.
That's crazy for a first.
Across 7 countries. Wow. I mean, this was very stressful. There were a couple of days when I would wake up at like 3 a.m, just being like, oh my God, I have such a big gap. I don't know what to do. And I would like get up because I couldn't sleep. So I would just research clubs and just send emails and make phone calls and just.
And what was this band then? Are they still active?
They're still playing. They had their 10-year anniversary last year. It's this band called Poland and very indie band. They're all a little bit older, my age, so it's also not their primary career anymore. That was a big reason why we split up, actually, about 5 or 6 years ago, because it increasingly became my career priority and decreasingly became one of the people in the band's, quite important person in the band's, career priority. So we had to split.
So under Chimes, you guys manage quite a few artists? Uh,
Quite a small few, actually. We have a really, really small roster right now.
yeah. When did Chime start?
So my career with this band, Poland was basically like my high school, college, and university and music all in one. We tried all the things. We literally on this first tour, I mean, everything happened. From like every possible scenario happened. The bassist even fell and broke his hand in France in the middle of nowhere. It was like had to all the things, right? So it was just this immediate crash course into the industry. And also because we were one of the only bands from Poland, we quickly gained attention at like showcase festivals. So we started doing lots of that. We ended up focusing very much on Germany as a territory, got a record label in Hamburg, and I was just learning by the seat of my pants and just figuring it all out. But it was wonderful. So then, and I, at this as well, I was hired by one of the first, really the only, at the time, the only showcase festival and conference that was happening in Poland. And I was hired to do the conference programming and the international relations stuff.
Which festival was that?
European Music Fair. We had international delegates coming. The festival existed for about 5 years. It hasn't existed for probably also 5 years, I think now.
Okay.
There's another one in Poland now called Spring Break that is very much a meeting of the Polish industry with a bit of international. So because the Polish industry is very domestic, very, very heavy domestic market.
I was going to ask because it is quite it's a big country. It's not a small country.
It is. Yeah, it's 38.8 million people. It's a very big country, increasingly wealthy. Purchasing power parity is pretty high. And people are quite inclined to spend money on music as well. People are quite inclined to go to concerts instead of going to the cinema or to going to museums. They prefer to go to a concert. So that's cool.
Yeah.
But I quickly realized also that all these projects, all this stuff I was doing wasn't really getting me anywhere.
Yeah.
And at some point I turned 29 and I was like, oh God, I imagined myself having something at 30.
Yeah.
So I decided to start a company. And so I started Chimes. Originally, it sort of was birthed with my friend coming up with the idea of a name, and I sat up all night one time putting up a website, and then very quickly I found myself a business partner, kind of by accident. It all sort of fused together in this moment of a couple of months of time. That's Anya. So you've met Anya. And we weren't that clear what we wanted to do at first, but we were very clear that we wanted to be doing import-export work.
Okay.
Export work. We wanted to position ourselves as one of the first points of entry into Poland if you want to enter the market.
Okay.
And because we knew we could make money off of consulting, as well as obviously we wanted to be doing artist management. Neither of us had been successfully making that much money on artist management, though. So we knew we needed something else.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was how Chime started 5 years ago.
When you choose the artists, because I've seen you have the different types of artists. So first of all, are you choosing artists that are mainly Polish based or of Polish origin?
No.
Or like what are the criteria for you? Like what makes you choose an artist? Like manage them. If you had to say
that has been very different over the years, I'd say. And if I think about it now and I look back on it, I think every artist that came up for a certain reason for my own career development as well. Every artist has sort of been leading me towards where I need to get in my career. And actually that was something that also has always been a bit of a tricky one, and that I think is extremely important, especially for artist managers, is to understand where is that line between your artist's career and what's happening there and your career ambition. Who are you and what do you want to achieve? And it took me a long time to understand the difference. I probably only really have started to understand that like a year ago.
Okay.
And to start to think about who I want to work with based on what I want to achieve.
Okay.
And not because it's something cool or because it's something that I think will do well or because I'm attracted to the music or because they come to me. Like I've only really learned in the past year to be very discerning of, is this someone that I can work with to achieve what I want to achieve in my career?
If I were to ask you, what would that be? Like, what would be the criteria that you want to achieve? Like, what's the goal in your mind?
Yeah, so that's a really tricky one as well, because our industry is,
Changes a lot. So what
it
we want
changes a lot.
to say,
I change my mind a lot. It's not that, no, it's not that I change my mind a lot. I I'm one of these people that I have a lot of different, like, fingers in a few different pies.
okay,
I like to keep a lot of things going to keep me stimulated, and
yeah,
a lot of things interest me, and this is not very humble sounding, but I'm quite good at a lot of different things. Just like, there was a point in kind of our society's generation where we used to embrace the concept of like the Renaissance man,
yeah,
and with the growth, right, or like a polymath, and with the growth of with the Industrial Revolution, we started to embrace as a society experts. So you have to be expert in one
yeah,
thing, right?
exactly.
I've never been that person. I've never been expert in one thing,
Yeah,
follow one path.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've always been much more of a polymath. And so that, I think, lends itself very, very well to being a music manager, but it makes it very hard generally to define a career path for yourself. Makes it challenging.
So all these artists you're signing, main that were, if you had to put certain criteria, they're all independent artists to start with.
Yes.
Are
I
they
signed one. I had one artist that I worked with that was a Warner artist at the time. And I
okay?
specifically wanted to work with her because she was on a major label, so I could leap into that world and learn the major label world.
Okay. And were they so if the one part is they're independent, another part is, are they starting emerging artists, or are they at the middle point in their careers, or like where are they when in terms of duration, like how long have they been doing this when
Yeah,
you
that had, to be honest, completely all over the board.
okay, so
I've probably worked with a dozen artists in the capacity of, generally in the capacity of a manager over the past, yeah, 8 to 10 years, and it's been all over.
if you had to give advice like for independent artists, emerging artists, like what would you say, like what would you tell them today? I mean, I manage a lot of artists, I speak to a lot, I used to
Mm-hmm.
manage them today, but I do work as a consultant with many artists,
Mm-hmm.
and I find very similar traits in all of them, and I wanted to see if you had like little basic tips to give them as emerging artists, because I'm sure a few are going to watch this. What would you say from your experience? What would you be like?
Some tips. I'd say that you have to be aware of what it is that you bring to the table, because you are entering into a business partnership. And so you need to be aware of what you're bringing to the table and what that requires of you, and what your business partner, aka your manager, is bringing to the table,
Yeah,
and constantly be aware of that and not sit back, because
yeah,
there are a lot of artists that have a tendency, especially in countries that have a music situation like you have in Poland, where you have the mega indie and then you have the sort of mega commercial and very little in between. You
okay,
have this tendency for artists to think that when they get a manager, oh, I can just sit back and my manager's going to do everything.
yeah,
And
exactly,
that is the opposite is the case.
yeah,
When you get a manager, it's like you're getting your first investor and your first business partner.
exactly,
So it is now your obligation to work to that. Like, someone is choosing to invest in you. You need to work to that level. Someone is choosing to go into business with you. You're 50% in this business as well. And it's not enough to write good music. In fact, when you're especially in the music world where we live in, where you have approximately 20,000 songs a day being uploaded onto Spotify alone,
I think
good
it's
music is bullshit. Good
yeah,
music doesn't exist anymore. It doesn't exist at all.
yeah.
It's about the hard work and the investment behind it.
When I speak to artists and find they have, new songs, new releases, and so on, I always tell them that you have a release and you are a product, you are a brand. So
Exactly.
that's what you are, and you have to promote yourself in some way.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we have all these platforms today that are currently for free. Currently, at some point in the future, we might start getting charged to use Facebook and Instagram and whatever and so on. Who knows? If you think back of what Facebook was 10 years ago versus
We are being charged. We're being charged with the amount of data we give away and the amount of information we give away. We're just not charged with the same concept of monetary exchange.
Exactly. My thing is with these platforms is that if they're there to be used to promote your music and yourself, then you have to use them like properly. Like you have to
Yeah.
feed this beast, like with content. And that's what I want to know. Like in your case, how do you manage that part of it in terms of the artist? Like what's your strategy in general
So
with artists?
yeah, so increasingly I'm working in the role of creative director. Either I'm working in the role of a creative director in a new label venture that I have now as well.
Okay.
So I've started a record label with 3 other people.
Okay.
And I'm the creative director. And then increasingly in our management company in Chimes, I'm working in the role of creative director with Anya. So we
Okay.
do co-management deals. So she and I manage artists together. And
Okay.
the way that we're starting to split that up increasingly is that I'm doing creative work and she's doing kind of management day to day, let's say.
Okay.
It's taken us a very long time to figure out how to settle into that as well. And it's taken us a very long time to understand how to play to our strengths, to be stronger as a team. But we really, really like working together as a team. It is constant work, that as well. She and I, and our relationship is constant work as well,
Okay.
besides the fact that you have an artist relationship to work on.
Yeah.
But to come back to your question, I do a lot of conceptualizing, a lot of brainstorming, a lot of outlining and planning, backing it up even actually first. The very first thing I do with an artist is storytelling work.
Okay.
I do a lot of storytelling activity and I use a lot of storytelling tools. I've become a bit of a sort of like expert in this. I do workshops on storytelling and such as well.
Cool.
But yeah, so I do a lot of storytelling work first to
Yeah.
get the very basic foundation in place so that not only does the artist know what they're about and what their brand is about, but then everybody else knows what it's about. The whole team gets fully informed and fully briefed in on what is the basics about this artist,
Okay.
so that and what are the key, down to even keywords, so
Yeah.
that even when I'm talking to like my Deezer rep about the artist, I'm using the same vocabulary and I'm talking about the same thing so that it ensures brand consistency across the base, and even using like visual messaging, it just the same emoji all the time,
Yeah.
just to sort of implant into people's subconscious this messaging.
Okay.
So yeah, so I do a lot of conceptualizing starting with storytelling, and then I go all the way through content creation as well. So
That.
I do
Yeah.
I do not actually, I very rarely actually fully create the content. I'll prepare briefs for designers, photographers, for the artists themselves, and have them do it. I'm in the middle of a mood board right now for literally, I closed my laptop to do this call, but I'm in the middle of doing a mood board right now.
Okay.
For an artist, for
And
our photo shoot.
just to carry on this point, so when you're talking about content, what's your take on the perception of streaming platforms that when they refer to releases as content? Because my meaning when they say an artist is releasing a new piece of content, they're thinking of
Mm,
it more as they're releasing a new song, and
the
this is
product.
a product, exactly. And my take on this, and I want to know yours, is that content is something that's consumed fast on Instagram and Facebook and whatever and so on. So the quicker it's consumed, the less time you should spend on creating it.
Mm,
Whereas when it's something like a song, when I mean quick, I mean that 1 second of swiping up and down.
yeah.
But when you're listening to a song, which is 3 or 4 minutes, so it takes that time of your day to listen to that song. That's when you put in the effort for more proper content to promote that. And I want to know what's your thought process in the content creation to promote a song, and what do you think of the concept of albums versus singles versus EPs in today's world?
Yeah, so I think that for me, it all comes back to creating an experience.
Okay.
So all of the things that you're talking about, whether it's content, whether it's social media, whether it's product, all that, it's all a factor in an experience.
Okay.
So our job is to create an experience for the consumer, for the fan, be it an online experience, a concert experience, whatever experience we can create. Our job is to create a holistic experience.
All
And
right.
every touch point that a fan has with an artist is an opportunity to create that experience.
Okay.
So that could be an Instagram post, it could be a song on Spotify, it could be a music video on YouTube, it could be a listening party, it could be a Zoom session together, it could be a concert, it could be merch, all of that.
Yeah.
It all is a touch point in this experience. And so you really need to be thinking about everything.
Yeah.
It's not about how long you take to create it. It's just about that there's cohesion in this experience and how it makes, and it's about how it makes the fan feel. That's part of the also experience, I think, right? So how you put your release strategy together depends on what kind of experience you want to create for your artist.
Okay.
I think that there was a moment when singles were the thing because of the playlist environment that we've existed in, or we exist in now. I think that is changing, and I think there is increasingly again space for albums or for a little bit of a longer experience.
Yeah.
The way that people are consuming music has changed in the past 6 months dramatically.
Yeah.
So it's really about thinking about the experience and where does your music fit into that experience, and then deciding, okay, well, does it make more sense for me to bleed out singles? Does it make more sense for me to do an EP? Does it make more sense for me to do a longer album experience? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So if you think about it as the experience with that you're creating for your fan, then I think it changes the way you think about what product you want to create and how you want to release it.
Okay. Yeah. And so carrying on from one point that you were mentioning there today, with today's context of pandemic, of a global recession everywhere, how do you see artists making money today? Like there's definitely new ways of making money, but what are the trends that you're noticing, and what do you think are the ones that are here to stay and the ones that are just like, Instagram Live or whatever, like stuff like that?
For sure, I think that video format is the number one format moving forward, full stop. Yeah. So I think that any artist that's not comfortable on video, bloody get comfortable, practice, get comfortable in front of a camera, seriously. With one of our artists, I was literally talking to him about this today because I'm so proud of him. I have forced him into talking to the camera because he has some important things to say, but he doesn't really like it. He's quite shy. And I've been forcing him, and he's been practicing, and we tried to set him up for success by getting him in a comfortable environment, get a light that makes you look and feel good in front of it, all these things, set yourself up to succeed, but practice.
Yeah.
So definitely video, I think, is the number one trend, and figuring out how to monetize video is very important. There are lots of different ways to do it, lots of different platforms.
Yeah.
Live is never something that I've been interested in spending too much time trying to create as a huge revenue stream, because I think that it depends on way too many gatekeepers. So I think it's important. I've always believed that it's important to make sure that your artist has a variety of revenue streams.
Yeah.
And because video is so important, think about what's needed for so many videos. Music. It's not just about you and your video. It's about all of the other videos being created out there.
Exactly.
So I think we'll probably start to see a lot more happening in that field. Sorry, in terms of sync, different kinds of sync in games, how music is featured in different places.
Yeah.
But also, I think there's opportunity for in the influencer world as well. We are, as people, we are being conditioned to question authority more and more, centralized authority. Yeah. So we're looking for more and more diverse forms of knowledge transfer. So you find that, the person, you might trust the person that you follow that has 10,000 followers on Instagram more than you trust the BBC, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, right? So I kind of think that looking into that influencer direction is it's a very important part of the future as well.
Okay. Yeah.
And I keep that purposefully enigmatic because I'm not entirely sure what that means yet either.
There are some people, whose voices as artists who have big followings, actually they're using it for the right purpose. They're saying the right things, and they do have an influence in that sense. Though there are certain people who are considered influencers who, I don't know, they stand in bikinis all day long. They're
Yeah.
not influencing
So
anything. Like that's nothing. But when especially musicians, like we saw it with the Black Lives Matter thing and so on. We've seen, like, when musicians who have followings make noise, it makes a lot of noise. So
yes, and people tend to believe they're kind of icons. They tend to trust what they have to say, right?
to go into something else now, just as a final like point before we close. I'm a big advocate for this, even though it's not something I can, I do what I can do, but I know there's a lot of friends of mine who are part of this, which is Keychange. And I think when I see a lot of the changes that have been happening, especially from that movement, I think it's fantastic to see that, like finally, there's actually a voice about this, and that it's being spoken about more, more publicly.
So Keychange, for people who don't know, it's a network of women and non-binaries in the music industry across how many countries? There's 74 participants this year. I think it's 16 countries, including Europe and Canada. And then also it includes a gender pledge. There are two pieces of the movement.
Exactly. So I wanted to see, for in your perspective, given that now it's something that's becoming more and more spoken about, us men who work in the industry, like what would you tell us we should be doing more of, that should be, we should be paying it. Obviously we pay attention to the lineups and so on, but what's the thing that you guys think that we do so bad that we're supposed to change, and that we have, because there's a lot. I know there's a lot to change, but I mean, just like, if you could just give, like,
That's a really great question. And I think that it's not the same in every place, for sure. But I mean, one of the biggest things is, I think, not to question women. I get questioned so much. And it's the problem with that is that I start to question myself. And when I don't say question, I don't mean like ask a question because you don't know something. I mean doubt me. When I'm saying something, why are you doubting me? I know this. You don't need to question this. You don't need to go and fact check it with 15 different people. Just believe it. I just said it.
Yeah.
Or I did this research. Like, I am an authority. Like, I need to be treated as the authority that I am. I have over 10 years of experience. I don't need to be doubted.
Yeah.
You can believe me. I know what I'm talking about. You know what I mean? And I think that for personally, that is something that I've noticed moving to the UK and spending a lot more time in the UK industry, that is something that I've experienced here more than I've experienced anywhere else. And it has led me to such a crisis of self-confidence and being lost as to where is my own compass. Usually I've always been someone that is extremely trustworthy. I trust myself. I trust my intuition.
Yeah.
And it has not led me astray that much in life.
Okay.
But because I've been questioned subtly, small things, constantly questioned and challenged here with everything, I start to doubt myself. Okay. And I've never experienced that in any other industry that I've interacted with. And I've done a lot of interaction in Central Eastern Europe and Germany. I've worked a lot in Germany, and I've worked a lot in Scandinavia, and it's particularly bad in the UK. And it sucks.
Here in the Middle East, already there's the issue of, the way the woman is perceived, for those who are, particularly religious and so on. I'm generalizing, of course. This is not, yes, but it's just, it is a thing, and it is a problem, like, and when I see it in the music industry, I see that there is obviously on the professional side, so there is a problem of, as you're saying, the way women are spoken to, or treated, if you will.
Yeah.
And on the artist side, this is something that I'm very, like, this is something I get really upset about this. Just for a bit of context, for an example, obviously this has been something I've been following up for the past few years, since 2017, and it's something, as I said, I'm a big advocate for. Though a part of me says it's not my fight, like I can't be full on a voice for it, but as long as I do have a voice, then I have to say this out loud.
Yeah.
It's not
Absolutely.
But it's not like it's not like my fight personally, because it's not impacting me personally, but I have a voice and I have to speak about it. So
Yeah, you're an ally.
exactly. And so during the lockdown, I did this thing on Beirut Jam Sessions where I had every week 18 different artists perform on our Instagram page. I had a total of 161 artists. They were roughly balanced, I would say 60% male, 40% female, if I look at it overall. But the part that really bothered me, and this was something that it made me question too many things, is that there was another 102 artists that refused to play. Of the 102, 90 were
90% were women. Yeah.
yeah. And that was
Yeah.
where I was like,
That's typical.
About the first part was like, the first few times I was like, maybe it's a coincidence. Then when I started realizing that it's just becoming more and more, I was starting to wonder, like, I need to know why this is the case. Like, why is this happening? Is it because it's a guy who's asking one? Is it because they're not comfortable in front of the camera? Is it because they think the perception of a woman is, and I'm talking about artists who are from all over.
Did you find any answers?
No, because every time I asked any of them, they were like, no, we don't feel like doing it. And you're not going to be like, oh, but why? If you don't want
I have a few reasons that I might be able to help you out with, because I've experienced this as well.
Your point of view on this.
Yeah, so I think there's lots of layers to this. One is confidence and judgments. People might not feel that they have the technical capability to set up a live stream that will make them feel good and confident in front of others, and they're worried about being judged. So that's one thing, that women might not have that. The other thing is that this lockdown situation has put a glaring light on the domestic disparity in most homes. And it has put a glaring light on the fact that while we think we're equal as women because we go to the workplace, we still actually deal with 99% of the shit at home. If you have kids, even more so. Yeah. So how are you supposed to commit to spending a day on a live stream for yourself when you have a child running around that someone needs to be taking care of, right? Okay. Or all of the other home stuff has to get done. I mean, I don't think that there are all that many women that have amazingly supportive partners that are going to take care of all of that in these tricky contexts so that you can dedicate your whole day to just figuring that out, right? But then there's this other...
The younger emerging artists who are single and, in their early 20s.
Well, so it's hard for me to say, but I have this one experience when I was booking the conference back in the day and I was booking speakers for it. I remember there was this one woman who I asked to come speak on a panel because I considered her to be a wonderful authority on PR specifically, and especially as a PR, I was sure she would say yes.
Yeah.
I went up to her desk in a sort of open space office and I asked her if she would be willing to sit on this panel, and she said no, and I was shocked. After the conference ended, she and I had become a bit closer friends, so I asked her. I just decided to ask her. I was like, "You're a PR woman. You're super outspoken. You're very confident. Like, why did you say no?" She said, "Because you asked me when there were other people around that would have judged me for kind of sticking my neck out because they think it's inappropriate to like be confident." And I think that there possibly is a little bit of that here. Of course, you weren't asking people publicly, but maybe there's this whole like, oh, well, I'm not necessarily like, oh, people are going to judge me, or like, I'm not necessarily worthy of this opportunity. Yeah, it's weird. We've been, so much shit has been shoved into our heads about what we do or don't deserve, how much space we deserve to be taking up, what we can and can't do. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it's very much a mix of all of these factors.
Yeah. No, but it's interesting to hear that point of view because I was, for me, I was questioning it. I've asked many people. I'm like, I really want to understand more, and like, because it's not one or two, it's 90 out of 102.
And that's unbelievable. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Yeah. So I'm just like, okay, it's an issue that needs resolving, and I think that it's up to platforms like the one I have here or yours or whatever. It's up to us, and especially men who work in this. It's up to us to be, as I said, as you said, I mean, allies, to be there and be like, we have to be aware of this.
I think that women need to be just also reminded that we're allowed to take up space, and we're allowed to be confident, and we're allowed to like talk about what we're good at, and like that's all great. Like we're allowed to have opportunities come to us and take them.
Absolutely.
Why not?
Absolutely.
But it's just shoved into us that we're not supposed to do that so much. We're supposed to be sitting in the corner and be quiet and be grateful all the time. Fuck that.
Yeah,
Like I
absolutely.
worked way too hard to just sit here and be quiet in the corner and be grateful all the time. I'm definitely appreciative of things, and I'm not, you know what I mean? But like,
Yeah, you're not supposed to be quiet. I mean, as you said,
exactly,
you busted your ass off to be where you're at. So certainly,
exactly.
no reason to be quiet anyway. But yeah. So again, I think we're done for time, which is cool. Thank you so much, Magdalena.
I'm so honored that you asked me. I loved receiving that email from you the other day. Thank you so much. I really needed it that day too. I was having a bit of a down day.
Okay.
And when you just wrote that email and I got it, I was just like, oh my God, I needed that. I was so honored. Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. I remember all our conversations. That's why I was always
Me
like,
too.
I'm definitely gonna reach out to you and ask you. And thanks for all your input here. So
Yeah,
thank
thank you
you
so
again.
much, Anthony.
Hopefully, I'll see you soon. And
In our new post-COVID world in
yeah,
some way or another, I'm sure.
exactly. Thank you so much again. And
Yeah, thank you.
touch. All right.
Yes, take care.
You too. Bye.
Bye.